All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the SSC MTS exam paper from the second shift on February 18th, 2026. We're going to break down the key questions so you know exactly what they're throwing at you.
So, what kind of questions actually popped up? Let's get right into it. Break them down and see what patterns emerge. This is all about making sure your last-minute revision hits the mark, right where it counts.
First up, let's tackle history and political science. And wow, they really covered a huge timeline here. We're talking everything from ancient invasions right up to how our modern government works.
And here we go, a perfect example. A super direct question about a massive event in the history of the Delhi Sultanate. This wasn't a trick question, It was straight up, do you know the date? Yes or no?
And the answer is 1398. This was a huge, game-changing event in medieval Indian history, and that's exactly why examiners love it. So, what's the big takeaway for you? These major historical turning points? Yeah, they're always a goldmine for questions. Always.
Okay, so then the exam kind of shifts gears, right? It zooms in on regional kingdoms with this question about the Yadavas. You might also know them as the Sayuna dynasty. It's a great reminder that you can't just focus on the big national story.
The capital was Devagiri. And see, this question points to a bigger pattern in the exam. They really want you to know the capitals, the founders, and the main rulers of these different regional dynasties. It's a recurring theme for sure.
All right, from way back in history, we're jumping forward to modern Indian politics. This one's all about parliamentary reservations, and it gets really specific. So the question is, how's your memory for numbers? The magic number is 47, and this is a fantastic clue about what the examiners are thinking right now. A question about women's reservation came up in an earlier shift, so it's pretty obvious that seat allocation in Parliament is a super hot topic.
Okay, next up, a section everyone knows is coming. Authors and books. Let's see whose work made the cut this time.
So they threw in a question on modern Indian literature, asking about this really well-known book that's all about, you guessed it, the nation's capital.
And the author is the one and only Khushwant Singh. Seriously, his name pops up all the time in these exams, so making sure you're familiar with his big titles is just a really smart move.
They also tested your knowledge of our national songs. There was a question about Vande Mataram, written by Bankim Chatterjee and first sung way back in 1896. And for context, you often see this compared with Jana Gana Mana, right? That one's by Rabindranath Tagore and was first performed in 1911. Knowing the key facts for both is absolutely essential.
And the book questions didn't stop there either. They also wanted to know who wrote this political biography, Indira Gandhi, Tryst with Power. And the author you needed to know was Nayantara Sahgal.
All right, our next section is like a whirlwind tour of India's amazing culture. The questions here were all about festivals, folk dances, and some really important heritage sites.
And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? The questions were super state-specific. You had the Tihar festival in Sikkim, Yakshagana in Karnataka, the super famous Hornbill festival in Nagaland, and Kakada dance from Gujarat. It's crystal clear. You absolutely had to know which state goes with which cultural event.
And it wasn't just festivals. They also wanted you to know your major heritage sites. This question, for instance, was all about the Bhimbetka rock shelters. That famous UNESCO site with the incredible prehistoric cave paintings.
And the answer is Madhya Pradesh. This just hammers home a super important tip for your prep. Questions about architecture and heritage, especially anything on that UNESCO World Heritage list, yep, they are pretty much guaranteed to show up. Count on it.
Okay, let's move on to our last big section, science and geography. And the questions here were a real mix, covering everything from basic biology to the location of ancient sites.
Now, here's a perfect example of a pattern you should watch for. A question on photosynthesis came up in both the morning and the second shift, but this one got super specific, asking about the very first step of the whole process. It just goes to show how they can take one core topic and drill down deep on it in different papers. So from plant biology, the exam jumped over to a really fundamental question about our own cells. This is one of those straightforward facts, but it's absolutely essential knowledge for any science prep.
The answer? It's the ribosomes. You probably remember them as the cell's little protein factories. This was a pure memory question, no tricky analysis, just did you know the fact or not?
And for geography, the questions were kind of a history-geography mashup.
They wanted you to know the modern-day locations of these important historical sites. So you needed to know that Golconda Fort is in Hyderabad and that Alamgirpur, which is an Indus Valley site, is located in Uttar Pradesh.
So what's the bottom line here? What does all this mean for you? Well, based on everything we've seen, this is basically your ultimate revision checklist. You've got to focus on UNESCO sites, know the locations of those Indus Valley sites like the back of your hand, and for sure, brush up on the seat allocations in Parliament. These are clearly the topics that are front and center for the examiners right now.
Look, this whole breakdown isn't just about what questions were asked. It's really a window into the examiner's mind, right? It shows you what they think is important right now. So the final question isn't for me, it's for you. Now that you've seen the pattern, how are you going to use this intel to make your own strategy even sharper?